Chapter 2777. Oh. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she had some guesses in her heart, but she still asked, "My matter? What matter?" Second Elder Miao's attitude made Yiqing Luo's smile, add a tinge of ridicule. These years, status and ability were indeed the most important. Originally she thought that Second Elder Miao would because of the appearance of the Secluded Palace's second palace lord. Placing all the bets on Secluded Palace. She had not expected. Second Elder Miao was leaning towards her. After knowing her real identity. Trying to get closer to her through Miao Yi? As expected, after hearing Yiqing Luo's words, Second Elder Miao gave a flattering smile. Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Miao have a close relationship, so it's most suitable for eldest young Miss Miao to say it. Saying that, he stretched out his hand and pulled Miao Yi's arm, pushing her in front of Yiqing Luo. "Eldest young Miss, why are you still standing here? Didn't you have something to say to Miss Yi earlier?" Miao Yi's willowy brows creased tightly as she impatiently shook off Second Elder Miao's hand. "Miao Yi." Second Elder Miao warned her in a low voice as he took a careful look at Yiqing Luo and immediately smiled. "Perhaps my tone earlier was a little too heavy and made eldest young Miss unhappy. I'll leave first, Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Miao, you guys continue chatting." Saying that, he nudged fourth Elder Miao who was standing by the side. The two of them prepared to leave. "What's the matter?" Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yi's steely green face as she laughed lightly. "Between us, what else can't be said?" The two elders who were leaving instantly pricked up their ears as they simultaneously slowed down their footsteps. Miao Yi pursed her lips as her expression sunk as she opened her mouth. "Sorry. Why are you apologizing?" Yiqing Luo smiled gently. Miao Yi was stunned as she raised her eyes and stared blankly at Yiqing Luo's alluring exquisite face. Ever since Yiqing Luo brought her back to the secret room in the Peach Blossom restaurant, Yiqing Luo had never intentionally concealed her own identity in front of her. From the beginning in the Peach Blossom restaurant's secret room, Miao Yi already knew Yi Luo's real identity. The one who was hailed as the little hero of the West Continent, the one who saved countless of students, the female version of the miracle, Yiqing Luo. She had heard of Yiqing Luo's name. He had also envied Yiqing Luo's ability. There was a time when he had fantasized about it. If only he had half of Yiqing Luo's boldness and determination. She would not have to leave the Miao tribe, the place that belonged to her. Miao Yi knew of Yiqing Luo's identity, but she had never asked about it, nor was she curious about it. She knew that Yiqing Luo treated her as a friend. That was enough. If not for Yiqing Luo, she would still be wandering outside, unable to return to the place where she belonged. Miao Yi's eyes were a little dazed. His eyes gradually turned red. After a long while, her long eyelashes trembled and she said in a nasal voice, "It's nothing. I just wanted to tell you that I will do my best in this Saintess selection." Yiqing Luo smiled as she raised her hand and rubbed Miao Yi's furry little head. "All the best, I believe in you." Miao Yi's eyes reddened even more as she felt the warmth of a big sister's palm. Since she was young, she had never enjoyed the so-called familial love. The so-called elder sister had never given her any warmth. Today, from Yiqing Luo's body, she could feel this warmth. Chapter 2778. She closed her cheek, feeling the warm touch. A smile gradually appeared in Miao Yi's eyes. She revealed a smile as she looked at Yiqing Luo and nodded her head vigorously. Not far away, the two elders who were standing among the Miao tribe guards who were continuously carrying the guards of the Palace of Darkness away saw this scene. They looked at each other and smiled in satisfaction. However, in the next instant, but she saw Miao Yi and Yiqing Luo saying goodbye and turning around to leave. Second Elder Miao's face darkened. He quickly walked over and stopped Miao Yi. "Did you say what you wanted to say? Get out of my way." Miao Yi frowned and tried to pass Second Elder Miao. However, Second Elder Miao moved to block Miao Yi and asked again, "Have you said what I asked you to say to Miss Yi?" "No." Miao Yi's voice was very calm, and her emotions did not fluctuate. "Can you move aside now? I still have to prepare for the upcoming Saintess selection." Miao Yi. Second Elder Miao was infuriated by her attitude and tightened his grip on Miao Yi's slender wrist. "This is all for the good of the Miao tribe. Since you're so close to her, how could she not help you with just a few words?" Miao Yi was getting impatient. The anger in Second Elder Miao's heart grew. He was about to speak. Behind him, Yiqing Luo's cold voice floated over. Second Elder Miao, what's going on? Is the dignified young mistress of the Miao tribe someone that a mere elder like you can drag around? Meanwhile, a dark force hurricane struck. It brushed past Second Elder Miao's hand, which was holding Miao Yi's hand. Second Elder Miao let go of Miao Yi in pain. He raised his hand and saw that the back of his hand was already covered in blood. Just a slight movement of his finger would cause the wound that had been swept by the hurricane to reopen, and the pain was excruciating. However, Second Elder Miao did not dare to show a dark expression. He endured the pain coming from the back of his hand and smiled, nodding repeatedly. Missy is right. I have overstepped my boundaries. Yiqing Luo raised her brows slightly as she slowly walked over. She placed a hand on Miao Yi's shoulder lazily. He leaned against Miao Yi. Their posture was intimate and natural. She tilted her head and smiled wickedly. Just now, Second Elder Miao even said that his tone towards Yi was a little harsh and made Yi unhappy. I'm very curious, in this Miao tribe, just how much authority does an elder have? Second Elder Miao's body stiffened and his face paled. Miss Yi has misunderstood. Misunderstanding? Yiqing Luo's tone rose as her long and narrow eyes squinted. Yi is the Miao clan leader's only direct bloodline, and is the future Miao clan leader. Furthermore, she is currently a candidate for the Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe. She has the protection of the Holy Maiden. How dare you, an elder of the Miao tribe, disrespect Yi? She paused for a moment before her tone suddenly became more serious. You're tugging at Yi and your attitude is terrible. I can't help but think deeper. Could it be that Second Elder Miao is trying to take away Yi's authority and replace her? Second Elder Miao's face instantly turned pale. He hurriedly shook his head and anxiously explained. I didn't. I've been in the Miao tribe for decades, how could I have such thoughts? Miss Yi, please don't misunderstand. Misunderstanding? Yiqing Luo's smile deepened as her charming eyes deepened. No one could tell the real meaning behind her smile. Obviously, it was a devastatingly beautiful smile. Obviously, it was a pair of alluring eyes that made one's heart flutter. But Second Elder Miao was being stared at by this pair of alluring eyes. When this smile was reflected in his eyes, he felt a chill run down his spine. Chapter 2779. Second Elder Miao felt a chill run down his spine. Wrinkles spread across his pale face. His body trembled and his voice trembled. It's my fault, I've broken the Miao tribe's rules. Yiqing Luo's fingertip tapped on Miao Yi's shoulder as she opened her mouth lazily. Future clan leader, how do you think we should punish those who break the Miao tribe's regulations? Miao Yi was stunned, not expecting Yiqing Luo to shift the topic to her. But when he met Yiqing Luo's smiling eyes, Miao Yi suddenly understood. Yiqing Luo was helping her to stabilize her position in the Miao tribe. Miao Yi's heart felt warm. This was the first time someone stood in her shoes and considered everything for her. So Yiqing Luo knew right from the start. Why were Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao pestering her? Second Elder Miao's request was actually very simple. She only hoped that she could make use of the friendship between her and Yiqing Luo. Let Yiqing Luo step forward to show the guests that she would stand on the Miao tribe's side, becoming their backing. Because Yiqing Luo not only represented Yiqing Luo, there was also the overlord and the power of the imperial palace. As long as Yiqing Luo agreed, this was very beneficial to the future development of the Miao tribe. At least, those who wanted to take advantage of the Miao tribe's current situation to attack them and invade their territory would give up on that idea. However, Miao Yi didn't want that to happen. Yiqing Luo had helped her enough. Yiqing Luo indeed treated her extremely well, treating her like a younger sister. But she couldn't be insatiable just because Yiqing Luo treated her well. Moreover, it had always been Yiqing Luo who had been sacrificing for her. As for her, she had never done anything for Yiqing Luo. How could she possibly make use of their friendship to make Yiqing Luo open her mouth? The minute Yiqing Luo announced in public she would become the backing of the Miao tribe, it meant that in the future he would be involved with the Miao tribe. Miao Yi wasn't willing to push her own burden onto Yiqing Luo. Because of this, Miao Yi had always refused. But now, Yiqing Luo used her own way to express her attitude. It wasn't a big publicity. Instead, he used his actions to show it. Yiqing Luo was teaching her to punish the chicken to warn the monkey. stabilizing his position in the Miao tribe. It was also a good opportunity to show that she, Miao Yi, was not someone to be trifled with. On Miao Yi's face the first time she met Yiqing Luo surfaced, that radiant and innocent smile. Yiqing Luo had already helped her to such an extent. Then she would have to walk on her own one step at a time. Miao Yi's eyes firmly looked at Yiqing Luo. Soon after, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. I'm afraid Second Elder has been in a high position for far too long, Miao Yi said, her voice icy cold. You no longer consider yourself to be Second Elder. Second Elder Miao shuddered and knelt in front of Miao Yi with a thud. When Fourth Elder Miao saw this, he immediately knelt down. Miao Yi's expression was calm without a hint of panic. She looked down at Second Elder Miao and continued, nothing can be accomplished without rules. Second Elder Miao should know the Miao tribe's rules better than anyone else. This person who broke the Miao tribe's rules, how to deal with him? Second Elder Miao should be clearer than anyone else. Young miss, spare me, spare me. Chapter 2780. According to the rules, Second Elder Miao offended her superiors and had the intention to replace me. She should be directly stripped of her status as an elder, and sent to the Gu Garden to be reduced to a Gu slave. Miao Yi enunciated each and every word in a calm tone. When he heard the words Gu slave, Second Elder Miao's face was ashen. Gu Garden. That was the place where Miao tribe's Gu worms were abundant. As for Gu slaves, it wasn't just to raise those Gu worms. Moreover, every time a new Gu worm was researched, the Gu slave would become the test subject of the Gu worm. If they were lucky, they could survive, and because of the new Gu worm they could develop the latent energy in their bodies. If he was unlucky, he would be devoured by the new Gu worm. That was the place that all the Miao tribe members feared the most. He looked at Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao's pale faces. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. She tilted her head and leaned against Miao Yi's shoulder. Her voice was extremely lazy. This punishment is not bad. Miao Yi smiled as well. Her confidence grew as well. She was about to continue speaking. However, the slender and soft fingers on his shoulder suddenly knocked gently. Miao Yi was stunned as she realized that Yiqing Luo had something to tell her. She glanced sideways. Yiqing Luo didn't say anything, only smiling faintly. There seemed to be some sort of emotion hidden in those deep and beautiful eyes. Miao Yi's eyes narrowed. Suddenly he seemed to have understood something. She shifted her gaze again, and when she looked at Second Elder Miao, the flames on her body had already gradually calmed down. She lowered her eyes and looked at the elder kneeling in front of her, but Miao Yi purposely dragged out her last syllable. These two words seemed to give Second Elder Miao hope. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Miao Yi. However, Second Elder Miao is an elder of the Miao tribe after all. You have worked diligently for the Miao tribe for decades. The corners of Miao Yi's mouth curled into a faint smile. Seeing that Second Elder Miao has a good attitude in admitting his mistake, I can pretend that your rudeness towards me did not happen. But, if there is a next time, there will be no next time. There would be no next time. There will be no next time. Second Elder Miao's anxious and uneasy heart felt much more at ease the moment he heard Miao Yi's tone. With a pale face, he repeatedly promised that he wouldn't dare to do it again. Miao Yi widened her smile in satisfaction. At this moment, the finger on Miao Yi's shoulder moved again. Shortly after, the soft and delicate body that was attached to Miao Yi's body slowly pulled away. This time, Miao Yi understood without the slightest bit of hesitation. She took the initiative to help the two elders up and said, "Elders, please don't kneel. In the future, the Miao tribe will still need the help of the two of you." A slap in the face and then a carrot. This was the message that Yiqing Luo transmitted to her. Yiqing Luo was extremely satisfied with Miao Yi's way of doing things. She raised her hand and stroked Miao Yi's head again. The dignified look on Miao Yi's face immediately faded away as she resumed a young lady's radiant smile. She raised her head and looked at Yiqing Luo. "Qing Luo, thank you. Alright, hurry up and prepare. We've been delayed by the secluded palace for such a long time. If we drag on any longer, the sky will turn dark." Yiqing Luo placed both her hands on Miao Yi's shoulder, pushing her towards the direction of the Miao tribe's inner region. Chapter 2781. Miao main building. In the long corridor on the second floor, stood two figures. This position coincidentally allowed them to have a panoramic view of the entire plaza. Standing slightly in front was a lady dressed in simple meow meow clothing. Her facial features were exquisite and gentle like water. There were some wrinkles at the corner of her eyes and she looked to be around 30 years old. The lady's gaze followed Miao Yi closely until Miao Yi's figure disappeared around the corner before she retracted her gaze. The lady's delicate brows creased. Eldest young Miss Miao's change is really huge. Behind the lady was an elderly dressed in a white long robe. He had white brows, white hair and a white beard. His figure was slightly plump and he looked very benevolent. The elderly stroked his white beard. This is all because of that young lady named Yiqing Luo who changed eldest young Miss Miao. He paused for a moment as his white brows curved, filled with smiles. Eldest young Miss Miao being able to grow up is a good thing for the Miao tribe. The lady remained silent for a moment as she nodded her head faintly. Soon after, his gaze was fixed on the extremely dazzling young girl with a face that could topple cities. After some time, her red lips moved slightly as she spoke softly. "Let's go, the sacred maiden selection is about to begin. We should go meet this lady who can change eldest young Miss Miao. Let's see how much magical power she has." Miao Tribe Plaza. Yiqing Luo sent Miao Yi off with her eyes. She then took small steps back to Dmo Xian's side. She had just gotten close when she sensed that there was a kind of frosty cold air flowing in the air. Yiqing Luo's footsteps paused as she looked at Dmo Xian who was still maintaining his original sitting posture. That half mask which she personally made had concealed the emotions on his face. But Yiqing Luo acutely sensed the chilliness emitting from Dmo Xian's body. He was in a bad mood. Who was it who had offended this great Buddha? Yiqing Luo looked suspiciously at the few people beside Dmo Xian. The few people who had been sitting next to her before she left her seat had now all obediently moved away from her and moved to the side. On the left and right there was at least a space of 3 seats. Only the overlord was left as he bent his knees on the soft cushion, displaying his elegance. Peach and Xiaojin, who came into contact with Yiqing Luo's puzzled gaze, spread out their hands as they shrugged their shoulders in confusion. Just as Yiqing Luo and Peach's eyes met, transmitting the message. Suddenly the man's cold and deep voice came into her ears. "Why are you still standing there?" Yiqing Luo shivered in fright from this voice. Her fingers unconsciously curled up a little. Earlier when he was in front of Miao Yi, whatever overbearing aura, indolent enchanting in front of Dmo Xian had all disappeared. She laughed dryly as she moved her feet and returned to Dmo Xian's side to sit down. Not waiting for Dmo Xian to speak, she had already spontaneously put her head into Dmo Xian's arms. The man's aura was very cold, but his embrace was still very warm. "What? Now that you know you're in the wrong, you're here to please me?" The man lowered his eyes and asked with a sneer. Yiqing Luo arched her head. The man's sandalwood scent lingered around her nose. She stretched out her arms and hugged his waist. In his arms, she raised her little head and smiled like a cat who had successfully stolen food. "Wrong? I'm the one who made the overlord unhappy." Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly, not knowing why when he saw the young lady's satisfied smile. His heart had a long-lost warmth. Chapter 2782. The young lady didn't know Dmo Xian's emotions were in turmoil. Her brows were still curved as she smiled sweetly and her voice was soft as though water could be squeezed out. "I wonder what I did to make the overlord angry?" Dmo Xian's eyes were slightly gloomy as he stared at her quietly, as though he wanted to stare into her soul. Yiqing Luo smiled even more wantonly. Her hands were also on Dmo Xian's waist, moving up and down, constantly taking advantage of him. There was no sign of her admitting her mistake and trying to please him. Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, Dmo Xian's large palm clasped onto the little hand that was caressing his waist. His pupils were deep. "In public, if you don't want to put on a show, then let go." Yiqing Luo's hand paused as the complacent expression on her face disappeared. Damn it. While Dmo Xian was poisoned by the centrifugal venom, he definitely wouldn't have that kind of reaction towards her. Touching him all over, touching all the muscles that she didn't dare to touch previously. Because if it was in the past, she simply wanted to touch Dmo Xian's firm muscles, to feel what it felt like. In the end there were only 2 possibilities. It was very likely that not only did she not touch his muscles, she would also be eaten clean without any residue left. Or perhaps, on one hand she was eaten clean and on the other hand she was forced to touch his muscles until she was afraid to see his muscles. No matter what the outcome was, Yiqing Luo expressed that she didn't want to experience it, so she specially touched him now. Even if Dmo Xian forgot about her and left her heart. But he was after all a man. She couldn't play happily anymore. Yiqing Luo retracted her hand resentfully, but her mouth was still very thick-skinned. I am trying to please the overlord and admit my mistake. So Miss Ye's way of admitting your mistake is to sleep with me? Dmo Xian raised his brows as his voice faintly revealed a chill. Yiqing Luo inexplicably felt a little cold. Even when she was leaning against Dmo Xian's arms. That chill was constantly surging into his skin. Yiqing Luo's pupils were slightly stunned as she quickly reacted and laughed. She suppressed the lingering cold air around her and her hands were not afraid of death as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist once again. Moreover, it was extremely bold. She reached into his wide silver robe and wrapped her arms around his sturdy waist. Her little face was pressed against his chest. Glancing at Dmo Xian with a faint smile, she gazed at his face. The only person who can make me admit my mistake and coax is only you, the overlord. The only person I want to sleep with is only you, the overlord. When she said this, she even deliberately used that extremely coquettish Taiwanese accent. She could be said to be an expert at acting spoiled. Dmo Xian's thin lips were slightly pursed, his gaze deep as he gazed deeply at her face. He did not say a word and his expression was indifferent. This reaction made Yiqing Luo not know what to do. Could it be that Dmo Xian wasn't jealous? Was he unhappy with the way she apologized and tried to please him? She had made her feelings very clear. What was he still upset about? Yiqing Luo expressed. A man's heart was even more difficult to fathom than a needle at the bottom of the sea. Stop crying. Lord Dizun is angry. How can I coax him? It was quite urgent. Yiqing Luo was still racking her brains, thinking of ways to coax her man. Suddenly, a man wearing a mask appeared in her eyes. The man's face was half revealed, and his elegant face was reflected in her eyes. Yiqing Luo was stunned and just wanted to open her mouth. Her lips were forcefully sealed by the man. Chapter 2783. What was going on? Wasn't he angry? Why did he suddenly kiss her? Yiqing Luo's mind was in a mess. She couldn't resist the temptation from Dmo Xian. Very quickly Yiqing Luo was thrown into disarray. Until she was released, she was lying in Dmo Xian's arms. Her ear was stuck tightly to his heart. Her heart was beating very fast, her mind was filled with the thump-thump-thump sound. But where her ear was stuck, the heartbeat was extremely calm without any ripples or waves. As though the kiss earlier was just a casual action, unable to stir up any waves in his heart. Yiqing Luo's thumping heart at this moment stopped beating. Her emotions disappeared very quickly. The lady's shyness also disappeared very quickly. This change naturally did not escape Dmo Xian's eyes. The brows under the mask slightly thickened, Dmo Xian's eyes sunk, his voice was still very cold. Why? Tired of this lord's kiss? The world's peerless beauty, only the overlord. How could I be tired of the overlord's kiss? Yiqing Luo's delicate body pulled a distance away from Dmo Xian. She half propped up, only her upper body, leaning into Dmo Xian's arms. 3,000 black hair pouring down. It looked extremely lazy. She raised her head for eyes and Dmo Xian level looked at each other. The overlord took the initiative to kiss me. Does it mean you have forgiven me? She raised one arm. The wide robe slid down to the wrist. Half of the skin, as white as jade, was revealed, revealing half of the skin, the fair as jade arm. Her hand circled around Dmo Xian's neck, and immediately her delicate body came closer to his arms. The distance between the two of them narrowed again. Almost it was nose aimed at nose. But this kind of closeness made Dmo Xian's brows creased even tighter. His eyes dimmed. Although the young lady in front was close to him. But the smile on the young lady's face was obviously too fake. It was just like the mask she wore when she was in front of others. To him it was no different to others. This kind of thinking made Dmo Xian's heart sink. Obviously just now she was still in his arms, soft as water. The more Dmo Xian thought, the more vexed he felt. Such emotions overflowed. It was impossible for Yiqing Luo not to feel it. But Yiqing Luo had no intention to open her mouth. She knew that when Zhou Xian kissed her, other than the man's most direct reaction, he did not have any feelings of love towards her. That was because of the centrifugal force goo in his body. But even if he knew, while she was being kissed passionately, but he didn't have the slightest reaction, she still felt rather sad. After the selection of the saintess, she must let cure Zhou Xian's poison as soon as possible. You're angry. The man's deep voice floated over. His long arms suddenly reached out and wrapped around her slender waist. Yiqing Luo's half-propped-up body suddenly pounced forward. She fell into his firm embrace. The man's scorching breath hit her in the face. Since you like my kiss, why are you still angry after being kissed? He bent down and touched his nose to hers. Their lips were separated by less than a finger. But he did not kiss her. A pair of sparkling peach blossom eyes stared deeply into her eyes. Chapter 2784. Zhou Xian knew that the young lady's words were just to brush him off. The girl didn't want to tell him the reason why she was angry. He didn't pursue the matter any further. After all, he was only slightly interested in this young lady. The girl didn't want to talk about it. He was too lazy to ask any further. Zhou Xian did not ask. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered to say any more. The eyes of the surrounding guests all fell on the two of them. He saw the sweetness between the two of them. He had to admit it. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. When they were put together, no matter what they did, it was so pleasing to the eye. Even though it was a public kiss in the eyes of the crowd, they still couldn't bear to spoil it, because it was such a beautiful scene. This was a society that only cared about appearances. He was good-looking. Most of the time they were easily forgiven. After this episode, the Holy Maiden selection of the Miao tribe had finally begun. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao's attitude towards Miao Yi had obviously changed after the beating just now. It was not just these two elders. It was the same for the rest of the Miao tribe. After all, Yiqing Luo's attitude towards Miao Yi earlier. Although he didn't say anything, but anyone could tell that Yiqing Luo was supporting Miao Yi. Yiqing Luo's backing represented the overlord's backing. What's more, Yiqing Luo was the little hero of the West Continent, the elder sister of the current patriarch of the Three Springs sect. He was also the benefactor of many academies. Various identities all indicated that Yiqing Luo was a master who could not be offended. He wanted to please Yiqing Luo. Naturally, they had to start from the people around Yiqing Luo. Because of this, Miao Yi was not obstructed by anyone during the selection process of the Miao tribe. Including Miao Yi, there were a total of 8 women participating in the selection. The oldest was 17 years old. The youngest was 11 years old. They were all women of the Miao tribe who were extremely talented in gu techniques. Before the saintess selection began, Yiqing Luo specially spoke out and said a sentence: "The greatest respect towards the opponent is to go all out. So there's no need to worry about Miao Yi's status. Just compete however you want." Yiqing Luo had already said this sentence. How could the other saintess candidates dare to go easy on him? If he went easy, it would be disrespectful to Miao Yi. Disrespecting Miao Yi was equivalent to disrespecting Yiqing Luo. Disrespecting Yiqing Luo was disrespecting the overlord. This complicated relationship was involved. Who could bear the consequences? Yiqing Luo's words were beneficial to Miao Yi. Miao Yi was able to subdue the ancient Gu king, so her strength was obvious. She didn't need her opponent to go easy on her. Moreover, if Miao Yi really became the Miao tribe's holy maiden, Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's henchmen might make a big fuss about it. For example, Miao Yi could become the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. He merely relied on Yiqing Luo's help. As for the other sacred maiden candidates, they were afraid of offending Yiqing Luo and intentionally lost to Miao Yi. Even if Miao Yi relied on her own strength, no one would believe it. He would also be accused of being unjustifiable. Whereas Yiqing Luo had already made things clear before the selection. This would also indirectly block the schemes of Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's henchmen. The truth had proven that Yiqing Luo's guess was not wrong. Miao Yi's strength had far exceeded her expectations. The reason why the Miao tribe could survive to this day was because of the Miao tribe's poison. Chapter 2785. Towards gu worms, Miao Yi, who had contracted the king of venomous worms, was naturally not unfamiliar with them. No matter if it was the first round of distinguishing goo worms, or the second round of analyzing the goo worm's nurturing and the method to neutralize it, or the third round of intimate contact with goo worms, Miao Yi had done extremely well. Her performance could be described as eye-catching and breathtaking. Even the elders who were originally extremely anxious couldn't help but stood up and clapped their hands. One must know how much pressure they were under just to sit here as the judges. Everyone knew that Miao Yi had been left outside by the previous clan leader since young. Unlike Miao Rongrong, who was the future sacred maiden whom the previous clan leader had meticulously nurtured. Plus Miao Rongrong's enmity towards Miao Yi. Miao Yi had been in Miao Miao for the past 10 over years, so she had no way to come into contact with anything related to goo worms. Later on Miao Yi left Miao Miao tribe. Now Miao Yi had just returned to Miao Miao tribe for a month. Even though Miao Yi had been trying her best to absorb the knowledge related to goo worms in this 1 month. But it was impossible for her to pass the sacred maiden selections safely in a short period of 1 month. The elders judging were afraid that Miao Yi would not be able to pass the test. Coupled with Yi Qing Luo's early warning, the other candidates didn't dare to go easy on Miao Yi, causing Miao Yi to fail and leave the competition, thus offending Yi Qing Luo. Their hearts had always been restless. Until Miao Yi's breathtaking performance. They finally put their hearts at ease. Miao Yi's performance. The other candidates didn't need to go easy at all. Miao Yi was able to pass the test easily and safely. While they were stunned, they were also curious. What method did Miao Yi use to be able to understand everything related to goo worms clearly in 1 month's time? After 3 rounds of selection, 8 candidates, there were only 3 left. Miao Yi's performance was without a doubt the best. By this time the sky had already turned dark. The elder judging looked at the pitch-black sky and was about to say something. Suddenly, a female attendant walked up with a letter and passed it to the elder judging. After the elder judging saw the contents of the letter, his expression changed slightly as his gaze subconsciously shot towards the Miao tribe main building's long corridor. But there wasn't a single figure there. The judging elder shifted his gaze to Miao Yi. After hesitating for a moment under everyone's gaze, he said word by word, "The last stage of the Saintess selection is tonight. Tomorrow you will have to raise a goo insect." He paused for a moment before continuing. According to the quality of the goo worms raised, the candidates who can enter the Saintess realm and accept the ancient goo worms examination will be determined. When the judging elder announced the rules of the 4th round, everyone burst into an uproar. Especially the people of the Miao tribe, they were all stunned. Everyone knew, a good quality goo worm needed time to nurture. Tonight or tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Which meant that from now until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, in such a short period of time he managed to raise a good quality goo worm. Was this a joke? After reading the rules of the last round, the judging elder's expression was a little strange. The judging elder nudged him. Since when was there a rule for the 4th round? That judging elder's face was pale as he shook his head at him. Shortly after, he passed the letter in his hand over. After the curious judging elder saw the handwriting on the letter, he revealed the same expression as him. The Miao tribe members looked at each other. Chapter 2786. The remaining 2 Saintess candidates had been raised as future Saintesses since they were young. Since birth they had been immersed in goo worms and goo skills. Even they had no way to nurture a goo worm of good quality in just a few hours. Looking at the past sacred maiden selections, Miao tribe had never had such a weird rule. Why was it only this time? But there was an additional difficult round. The 2 sacred maiden candidates looked at each other in dismay. The expressions on their faces were dark and extremely ugly. Miao tribe's women all wanted to become the sacred maiden. They naturally wanted it too. Although Miao Yi was the direct descendant of Miao tribe leader. And she had Yi Qing Luo and the overlord behind her. But didn't Yi Qing Luo say it earlier? Everything depended on ability. In their hearts there was still a little bit of hope. As long as they used their own ability to surpass Miao Yi and become the Miao tribe's sacred maiden. Even if Yi Qing Luo was finding trouble for Miao Yi, she would definitely be drowned by the rumors and slanders. Not only would she throw away her own face, the overlord's reputation would also be tarnished. After all, there were so many guests present and they were all witnesses. But all the luck after the judging elder announced the additional rounds rule was completely shattered. Just at this moment, at the guest seating area, a rough man's voice was heard from the back. I told you there's something wrong with this Miao Yi. Looks like the judging elder also saw that there's something wrong with Miao Yi, so he set up this fourth round of selection. Brother Yang is right. Someone echoed, and his voice was loud and clear, as though he couldn't wait for everyone in the public square to hear his words. Who in the entire Miao tribe doesn't know Miao Yi's ability? She had never come into contact with any Gu skills or Gu worms, so how could she possibly answer those questions? The second round's Gu worm rearing method and antidote method, even us Miao clansmen don't know about it. She is someone who had never come into contact with Gu worms, but not only did she answer it, she answered it so professionally, as though she had reared those Gu worms and antidote those Gu worms. From what I see, some people, in order to let Miao Yi become the sacred maiden, got all the sacred maiden selection questions and made Miao Yi memorize them all. After this sentence was uttered, a storm was set off in the entire square. The more the Miao tribesmen thought about it, the more they felt that this person's words made sense. Everyone knew that Miao Yi's situation in the Miao tribe was at most a little better than a Gu slave. Miao Rongrong didn't want to give Miao Yi any chance to come into contact with the Gu worms. So, Miao Yi's performance in the Saintess selection was stunning. The reason was, he knew the topic of the Saintess selection in advance. That made sense. That person who got the question. Everyone instinctively shifted their gazes onto Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian once again. Apart from these two people, they couldn't think of anyone else who could get the Miao tribe's holy maiden selection. It seemed like what these people had said was true. The judging elders found out that Miao Yi had cheated. But due to the presence of Yiqing Luo and the Overlord, they didn't dare to expose him on the spot, so they stayed at the fourth round to maintain the Miao tribe's fairness. If that was the case, everything would make sense. Chapter 2787. On the stage, the faces of the two Saintess candidates who stood side by side with Miao Yi immediately darkened after hearing the crowd's discussion. They looked at each other, then at Miao Yi. On the young and beautiful face, her eyebrows were tightly furrowed. It was obvious that she was unhappy. So the judges added an extra round of selection because you cheated. Miao Zhilian, a candidate who was about 14 years old, gritted her teeth in anger. The Saintess, Miao Shuren, who was about 17 years old and looked rather mature, pulled Miao Zhilian's sleeve, signaling her to stop talking. Miao Zhilian was still angry, but she knew that she could not vent her anger on Miao Yi. He and Miao Shuren stood to the side. He distanced himself from Miao Yi. Miao Yi stood there alone. Her slender figure was very frail. She did not move. She didn't move at all when the guests were talking and pointing at her. Even the expression on his face did not change much. Below the selection stage, Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly. Even though Miao Yi hid it well. But Yiqing Luo could still see the fluster in the depths of her eyes. After all, Miao Yi had never encountered such a thing before. No matter how early he matured. Be sensible at a young age. She was only a little girl less than 15 years old. Facing everyone's suspicions and distrust. No matter how she tried to explain, it would seem so weak and powerless. No one would believe it. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past the few rows at the back, where they were still leading the rhythm, discussing incessantly. Those are Miao Rongrong's henchmen. Peach explained, Miao Rongrong has fallen from power, and Miao Yixiong has been stripped of his position as clan leader. If he takes over, they will be the first to be eradicated. Yiqing Luo nodded in understanding. The Miao tribe did not allow their tribesmen to leave the tribe without permission. If these people escaped from the Miao tribe, they would also be hunted down by the Miao tribe. Therefore Miao Rongrong's henchmen wanted to survive. He could only think of ways to stop Miao Yi from becoming the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. As long as Miao Yi fell, they would then bring out a new Miao tribe leader or saintess. They still had a chance to survive. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as a chilly glint flashed past her eyes. She had yet to speak. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were the first to find trouble. Because Miao Rongrong's henchmen, while setting the tempo, had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo's reaction. He caught a glimpse of Yiqing Luo's gaze. His eyes were hazy, causing people to shudder. The man's rough voice rang out loud and clear. Lady Yi, am I not speaking the truth? Why are you looking at us like that? Are you trying to silence me? Someone at the side immediately followed up. Kill them to silence them? Everyone present knew that Miao Yi had cheated. Are you going to kill all of us? Miss Yi, Miao Yi's cheating has something to do with you. Our Miao tribe's holy maiden selection is such a sacred matter. But you use such a method to disturb the sanctity of my Miao tribe. What exactly are you thinking? Very quickly, Miao Rongrong's henchman pointed all the spearheads towards Yiqing Luo. It was just a few simple sentences. He had easily provoked the anger of the Miao tribesmen. To the Miao tribe, the holy maiden of the Miao tribe was their faith. The Miao tribe's holy maiden selection was the most sacred matter. But Yiqing Luo used such a method to destroy the fairness of the holy maiden selection. Chapter 2788. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were still hooting. The Miao tribesmen's emotions were also stirred up. The scene was out of control. Even the Miao tribesmen went up to pacify them. The Miao tribesmen were waving their arms and shouting. They needed an explanation from the person who revealed the selection questions. They needed Yiqing Luo to give them an explanation. The onlookers were the guests from the other continents. It wasn't convenient for them to say anything now. Now the Miao tribesmen were extremely agitated because their beliefs had been blasphemed. If they opened their mouths, it would be easy for them to direct the fire onto themselves. The scene made Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest revealed a complacent smile. Suddenly, someone in the crowd started to shout, "Miao Yi, step down! Miao Yi, step down!" The deafening slogans gave the Miao tribesmen a chance to vent their frustrations. One by one they started to shout along with the slogan. The lady who was standing on the stage faced the hooting and cursing of the crowd. Her exquisite little face turned pale bit by bit. Her petite figure was trembling slightly. A pair of lively eyes stared blankly at the tribesmen below. Everyone's hooting and cursing were reflected in her pupils. No matter how strong she was. No matter how mentally prepared she was. But when she saw this scene, it made Miao Yi's strong heart start to show signs of collapse. She had obviously relied on her own hard work to get to where she was now. Why was it that no one was willing to believe her? The lady's slender figure started to bend down under the pressure. She wanted to curl up. She wanted to hug herself and stay away from all the doubts. Miao Yi's performance didn't make the Miao tribesmen feel any sympathy. On the contrary, the hooting became louder and louder. "Hey, you said I gave the sacred maiden selection questions to Yi to cheat. Do you have any evidence?" Just at this moment, a cold voice leisurely suppressed all the cursing and hooting. Following that, they saw the red-robed young lady who was sitting in the first row lazily supporting herself on the man's shoulder as she stood up. His red robe cascaded down like a raging fire in high spirits. The young lady's gorgeous face had a trace of indifference and laziness. It was just such a lazy posture. But for some reason, it made the pressure in the air to become extremely heavy. Miao Rongrong's henchmen's smug smiles froze on their faces. The powerful pressure made it extremely difficult for them to breathe. The square instantly fell silent. Only the girl's lazy laughter could be heard. It was like a feather that swept through everyone's hearts. "You brought this matter to my ears. If there is no evidence, I will be very angry." The girl's voice carried a hint of a smile as well as the unique sweetness of this girl. "After all, what I hate the most is being the scapegoat." Miao Rongrong's henchmen felt a chill run down their spines and their bodies trembled. After a long time he finally found his voice again and with a choking voice he forced himself to mutter, "Tis. What other evidence is there even a need for? This is something that the entire Miao tribe knows about. Apart from you, who else could possibly have the means to help Miao Yi cheat? With just a mouth? Then, can I say that you are also cooperating with that young lady to cheat in the sacred maiden selection?" Yiqing Luo smiled as she pointed at Miao Zhilian, smiling contentedly. Chapter 2789. Venomous Slander? Yiqing Luo smiled calmly. "I'm very curious. Those people who looked to be in their 30s or 40s had personally said that there were several types of goo poison in the second round of the sacred maiden selection. Even they didn't know the method to nurture and cure it, so how did a 14-year-old young lady like you manage to answer it?" Yiqing Luo pointed at those people who were Miao Rongrong's henchmen as her eyes curved into a smile. "So I also suspect if you had colluded with those people to get hold of the sacred maiden selection questions in advance and then made those people intentionally shift the suspicion of cheating onto Yi, to confuse the public." Yiqing Luo's words were spoken word by word. Her tone was very certain. Yiqing Luo's aura was originally strong. He acted as if he was serious and the words he said made people believe him. Miao Zhilian's face instantly turned red as her eyes turned red. You're spouting nonsense. I've been familiar with the art of Gu since young, so naturally I'm clear about it. I'm different from Miao Yi, that trash who was born without a father to teach her. Miao Zhilian was still young. She had been nurtured as a sacred maiden candidate since young. Naturally she was proud and arrogant. How could she tolerate Yiqing Luo's slander? She was so infuriated that she lost all rationality as she started to ramble. Miao Yi cheated and you want to drag me down with you? What evidence do you have to say that I cheated? On what basis do you say that I cheated? Just based on the fact that you have the overlord? Without the overlord, who do you think you are? Miao Zhilian's words made Miao Shuidan, who was standing by the side, flung her hand away as she shrunk to one side. Yiqing Luo was obviously protecting Miao Yi. Yiqing Luo was obviously going against Miao Zhilian. She helped Miao Zhilian, she might get into trouble. The moment she was abandoned by Miao Shuidan, Miao Zhilian regained some rationality. She recalled what she had said earlier. Her face turned pale instantly. Subconsciously, she looked towards the direction of her parents. But her own family had all averted their gazes. Apparently they had decided to give up on her. Miao Zhilian's heart seemed to be pressed down by something fiercely, making her unable to breathe. Moreover, Yiqing Luo didn't give her a chance to breathe. What evidence? Since they don't think it's necessary, then there's no need for it. Yiqing Luo smiled as she tilted her head as she looked towards the direction of Miao Rongrong's henchmen. After all, don't you Miao people believe that as long as you open your mouth, everything is the truth? When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Immediately the clamoring clansmen calmed down. They looked at Miao Zhilian, then at Miao Yi. Following that, he turned his head back and took a look at Miao Rongrong's henchmen and looked at Yiqing Luo. For a moment he didn't know who to trust. Yiqing Luo's smile was very faint, without any fluctuation of emotions. But, other than your Miao tribe's simple-minded folkways, there's another point which is worth me to ponder over. She raised her eyebrows. Her eyes were like torches as she stared at the selection platform, at the two elders who had ugly expressions on their faces. She enunciated each word clearly. You Miao tribesmen don't trust your own elders. So why go through so much trouble to organize the sacred maiden selection ceremony? The faces of the Miao tribesmen darkened. The judging elder could no longer sit still. He stood up and was about to speak. Chapter 2790. She raised her slender brows and with her gorgeous looks, her smile was beautiful but cold. The sacred maiden selection is to your Miao tribe, they should be clearer than you on how sacred it is. Yiqing Luo's interrogative words came one after another. All the Miao tribe's tribesmen turned silent. These Miao tribe's tribesmen were unable to leave the Miao tribe's territory because of the tribe rules. As a person they were naturally more innocent. Just a few words and she was able to influence their thoughts. Miao Rongrong's henchmen could do it. So could she. Looking at Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others' ashen expressions, Yiqing Luo's smile deepened. The few Miao tribe's elders' faces turned green and white. Yiqing Luo's words made their faces turn red. They wanted to refute. But Yiqing Luo's words were the truth. Only when Yiqing Luo said it in front of so many guests. She exposed the internal discord in the Miao tribe, easily provoking the trust. They felt embarrassed and annoyed. The Miao tribe's elders all knew that those who started the rhythm were Miao Rongrong's henchmen. They also knew why those who started the rhythm would intentionally disrupt the sacred maiden selection. But they had to admit. After those people raised Miao Yi's doubts. Even they themselves started to doubt whether Miao Yi had cheated or not. This kind of thinking, after Yiqing Luo brought it out in the open, made them feel ashamed. You're just pestering endlessly. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others were unreconciled as they gritted their teeth. We have nothing to do with Miao Zhilian. Yiqing Luo, the more you confuse the public, the more I suspect that trash Miao Yi to pass the first 3 rounds of the sacred maiden selection. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Whether she has anything to do with it or not, it's not for you to say but me. The smile on her brows was enchanting, but it revealed an obvious chill. If I show the evidence that Yi didn't cheat, then can you show the evidence that Miao Zhilian didn't cheat? Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others were stunned as their faces revealed a suspicious expression. Evidence? What evidence could they show? They hesitated. Yiqing Luo became overbearing. Why? Don't dare? Are you afraid that the matter of you slandering the Holy Maiden candidate will be exposed and punished by the Holy Maiden? Or are you afraid that the matter of you secretly colluding with Miao Zhilian will be proven? Yiqing Luo's voice was very leisurely with a slight smile. Clear and sweet like a silver bell, pearls and jade falling on a plate. No matter how one listened to it, it was extremely comforting. However, everyone felt that the ruthlessness in that voice seemed to be able to drag them into an ice house with a wave of his hand. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were so frightened by the invisible chill that they forgot to retort. And this hesitation. This made the Miao clansmen as well as the guests to confirm the truth of Yiqing Luo's words. Miao Zhilian was so angry that she burst into tears on the spot. Nonsense. I didn't cheat. I did not collude with those people. I don't even know that group of people. Miao Zhilian's exasperation was a stark contrast to Miao Yi's calm and elegant demeanor. The elders of the Miao tribe could not help but think. From the very beginning when Miao Yi was condemned and questioned by everyone, Miao Yi had never opened her mouth to defend herself even once. She stood there with a calm expression. Her back was straight. Her gaze was extremely determined. Chapter 2791. The two judging elders looked at each other and nodded their heads. Following that, they looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction at the same time. One of the judging elders stood up. Since there are tribesmen who questioned the Sacred Maiden selection's fairness, then, in order to ensure the Sacred Maiden selection's fairness and holiness, I am willing to accept Miss Ye's suggestion. The other judging elder also stood up. I wonder what evidence does Miss Ye have to prove that eldest young Miss Miao did not cheat? If Ye's innocence is proven, how do you intend to deal with that bunch of people? Yiqing Luo gave a meaningful smile as she shot a glance at Miao Rongrong's henchman and asked with a light smile. The judging elder was an astute person as he immediately slapped the table. The Sacred Maiden candidates are protected by the ancient Gu King of the Miao tribe. If eldest young Miss Miao's innocence is proven, those people are scheming to slander the Sacred Maiden candidates, disrespecting the Sacred Maiden and the Miao tribe. I will definitely punish them severely. Punish? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes. The severe punishment that elder mentioned, to what extent will it be? This. The judging elder didn't expect Yiqing Luo to ask this question as he muttered to himself for a moment. What does Miss Yi think? Should be done? They are slandering Yi. If it is proven that Yi is innocent and did not cheat, then these people should be handed over to Yi to deal with. The rest of the Miao tribe are not allowed to interfere. Yiqing Luo spoke with a matter-of-fact look. These words sounded reasonable. But if one listened carefully, it was indeed overbearing and unreasonable. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest, even if Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong had fallen, they were after all the Miao tribe's tribesmen. According to Yiqing Luo's suggestion, they should be handed over to a young lass like Miao Yi to deal with. This was truly a challenge to their authority as elders. But the current situation. No matter how uncomfortable the judging elder was, he had to nod his head in agreement. Actually, the way to prove it is very simple. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up slightly as her eyes shone with a crafty glint. Don't you feel that? Yi was able to answer all the questions in the Sacred Maiden selection because she cheated? Why not we let you set the questions randomly as long as it is related to witchcraft you can ask. As she spoke, she glanced at the three candidates on the stage. Her slender fingers traced them and pointed at them one by one. Do you dare to accept it? The young girl's voice was very soft, but each and every word was like a heavy stone heavily pounding on everyone's hearts. Miao Zhilian was so frightened that she stopped crying. Miao Xuedan's face turned slightly pale. She clenched her sleeves tightly, not daring to answer. Miao Yi's beautiful eyes, which had been emotionless all this time, finally showed some ripples. Miao Yi raised her eyes and met with Yiqing Luo's resolute smiling eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered. For no reason, her heart seemed to be covered by a warm current. Miao Yi closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she raised her red lips and spat out one word with determination. I dare. The judging elder was startled. He furrowed his white eyebrows and reminded her, Miss, you have to think this through. If you can't answer or answer the questions wrongly, you will really never be able to wash away the suspicion of cheating. I've thought it through. Miao Yi didn't hesitate at all as her tone was filled with determination. If I can't answer, I'm willing to accept punishment. Miao Yi's words ended. Chapter 2792. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest looked at each other in dismay. They were feeling apprehensive and didn't give a reply for a long time. Yiqing Luo didn't have much patience as she urged them impolitely. Why? You don't dare to come up with the questions personally? Those few people clenched their teeth as they clenched their fists. All right. Not only us. Anyone present who has doubts can come up with the questions. As long as she can answer it, we believe that she didn't cheat. They didn't believe it. This trash Miao Yi could really answer all the knowledge related to venomous spells. They couldn't ask Miao Yi. And the other Miao clansmen. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her narrow eyes curved as she smiled at Miao Yi. Miao Yi nodded her head calmly. Sure. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened as she immediately shifted her gaze back onto those people. Between her brows she was still smiling. But the feeling she gave off was totally different from when she faced Miao Yi earlier. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the rest only felt that when that pair of smiling eyes fell onto them, it was as though they were covered with a thick layer of frost. Since you've agreed to this method to prove your innocence, then, that also means that you've agreed to the suggestion of severe punishment that I mentioned earlier. Yiqing Luo's lazy voice spoke softly. Miao Rongrong's henchmen and the others' expressions congealed as their expressions turned ugly. They wanted to reject. But on second thoughts, Miao Yi had to accept all the questions from the Miao clansmen who had doubts about her. Under such huge pressure. Even if the current sacred maiden stood out, she didn't dare to pat her chest and guarantee that she could answer all the questions 100%. It was even more impossible for Miao Yi. Thinking in this way, the man with the rough voice sneered, Yes. We agree. Yiqing Luo smiled satisfactorily. Everyone present, please help to be a witness. As for me, I'll say the ugly words first. If Yi's innocence is proven and you go back on your words, then don't blame me for killing your Miao clansmen. The last 3 words. Yiqing Luo's bite was extremely heavy. There was a hint of coldness in his tone. The group of people trembled. The arrow was already knocked on the bowstring and they had no choice but to release it. They stiffened their necks and forcefully endured. Yiqing Luo looked at the other 2 candidates on the stage. You guys. Don't dare to accept the challenge? But why should I agree? I didn't cheat. Miao Zhilian's eyes were still red and she was sobbing as she spoke. You didn't cheat, so I used this method to prove my innocence. Yiqing Luo said slowly. So if you didn't cheat, why are you panicking? Miao Zhilian shrank back as she had a natural fear towards Yiqing Luo. I accept the challenge. Miao Xuedan, who had been standing in the corner, suddenly walked out. Her beautiful face was filled with elegance. Miao Zhilian's words were stuck in her throat. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she smiled and nodded her head. Miao Xuedan was quite smart. Miao Zhilian was filled with grievances and fear. In this uneasy mood, he had no choice but to agree to prove his innocence with Miao Yi and the others. After all, Miao Xuedan had accepted the challenge. If she continued to reject it, then she would be bearing the name of cheating. Even if she had 100 mouths, she probably wouldn't be able to explain it clearly. Chapter 2793. You. Yiqing Luo pointed at Miao Xuedan. Express to Yi that you suspect her apologies. You. Yiqing Luo's finger moved and pointed at Miao Zhilian. Run 3 rounds around the Miao tribe and shout, I'm a waste at the same time. Based on what? Miao Zhilian's eyes turned red as she howled angrily. Yiqing Luo's smile turned chilly as her eyes shot out a chilly glint. Miss Miao Zhilian, didn't you keep saying that Yi is a waste? Are you afraid that your answer rate is lower than Yi? Miao Zhilian's face flushed red as the anger in her chest surged. Who's afraid? Good. As long as her answer rate is higher than mine, then I'll run those 3 rounds. She gritted her teeth as her gaze turned sinister as she stared at Miao Yi. If Miao Yi loses, then the one who runs 3 rounds and shouts I'm a waste will be her. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she looked at Miao Yi. Miao Yi didn't hesitate as she spat out a word, all right. The few Miao tribe elders looked at Yiqing Luo's extremely confident look. Looking at the stage, Miao Yi's calm expression. Their hearts couldn't help but started to beat faster. Were they really so confident that they could answer the questions raised by the tribesmen? That bunch of people were all Miao Rongrong's henchmen. Now that the situation was so tense, they would absolutely not give Miao Yi a chance to make a comeback. The questions raised were definitely tricky and sharp. There was a possibility that even if it was them, they might not be able to answer it. How could these two young ladies display such calmness and confidence? It wasn't only the few elders who were curious. The guests who were crowding around were also filled with curiosity. From the barrage of gossips, the guests mostly understood some matters regarding Miao Yi, a young lady who had never come into contact with goo worms and sorcery. Could she really answer the questions raised by the Miao tribesmen regarding the sorcery? The judging elder looked at Yiqing Luo and Miao Yi and once again confirmed that the both of them weren't pretending to be calm. He cleared his throat and was about to speak. Suddenly, another female attendant walked up and handed over a piece of paper. The judging elder's expression changed as he swept his gaze around but didn't see that familiar figure. Since he was at the scene, why did he have to keep hiding? The judging elder criticized in his mind as he followed the requirements on the letter and loudly said, "Due to time constraints, we can only give the people of our tribe a chance to ask 10 questions. Only 10 questions? Miao Rongrong's henchmen were immediately displeased. How is 10 questions enough? There are so many voodoo spells and there are also other people who want to ask questions. Miao Yang, this is to prove that Miss Miao didn't cheat. That's why there's a Q&A session. It's not for you to test Miss Miao." The judging elder's tone darkened as he looked coldly at the leader of the group. "Miss Miao is a candidate for the Holy Maiden. You'd better watch your attitude." The man called Miao Yang was immediately silenced by the elder judge's rebuttal and did not dare to refute. 10 questions it is. As long as Miao Yi couldn't answer a single question, Miao Yi would never be able to wash away her disdain for cheating. Both sides had no objections to this condition. The judging elder presided over this segment and allowed them to start asking questions. After scamming those people who had nothing better to do, Yiqing Luo continued to lie lazily back into Zhou Xian's arms, calmly waiting for the outcome. Chapter 2794. I believe that everyone who works hard for their dreams will have the confidence to do their best. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up as she placed her chin on his chest. Her charming eyes were filled with brilliance. She had never been someone who was willing to be mediocre. Deep in her bones is the direct bloodline of the Miao tribe. Her smile in between the words softened by a few degrees. Even if Miao Rongrong does not give her any chance to touch the goo worm, she will also create an opportunity. And she paused and laughed hoarsely. She is the master that the ancient Goo King has acknowledged. How could she not be able to do such a simple thing? The big palm on her waist suddenly tightened. The man lowered his head and gently blew a breath of air into her ear. It made Yiqing Luo's petite body tremble. There was a feeling of numbness like an electric shock. The young lady's reaction, "Please Zhou Xian." The man gave a low laugh. His voice was deep and languid. "If it was you, for the thing that you are pursuing, can you do it to such an extent?" Yiqing Luo's ears turned red. Her cheeks were hot, like a fire burning. Listening to the man's low hoarse voice, exuding a hormonal aura that seduced her all the time. Beside her ear, the man's low laughter became more and more captivating. Yiqing Luo's heart almost rippled to the sky. Her 5 fingers unconsciously curled, not willing herself so easily controlled by the man. She took a deep breath, her hands suddenly wrapped tightly around Zhou Xian's waist. Her little head smashed hard against his chest. Immediately she raised her head and looked at his eyes seriously. Under the golden mask, those 2 shimmering peach blossom eyes were very deep, with a trace of dark and unknown complex luster. This man, no matter what temperament, that kind of peerless elegance made one's mind ripple. Yiqing Luo's pink lips moved, word by word, clearly enunciated. "After all, I am the woman that the Overlord has taken a fancy to. If it is for you, I can do anything." Her voice was very light and very gentle. Between her brows there was a slight smile. The few people around couldn't help but shiver. One by one they moved a few places away with an unbearable expression. "Have you ever considered our feelings when you're doing this? My eyes are about to be blinded. You've gone too far." Xiao Jing, Peach and the others tried to ease the atmosphere as they joked around. However, the lovey-dovey couple remained motionless as they stared at each other. Zhou Xian's deep pupils locked onto her face without blinking. For a long time his eyes were expressionless as he pushed her away. There wasn't even the slightest bit of joy from the girl's confession. It was as if it couldn't even cause a ripple in his heart. Very cold. The few people who were making a ruckus around them fell silent. Instantly the atmosphere became cold and oppressive. But the Yiqing Luo who was pushed away didn't reveal any sad or unhappy expression. Instead she calmly tidied up her messy clothes and spontaneously leaned against Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian did not move. He didn't reject her approach. Yiqing Luo didn't move as her vision fell onto Miao Yi who was on the selection stage. Soon the Saintess selection would end. Xian would be able to return to normal. Yiqing Luo quietened down. But Zhou Xian had no way to be quiet. Chapter 2795. The girl didn't continue to tease him. He was not used to it. The girl's words just now. It hit the softest part of his heart. He couldn't control this strange emotion. The only thought in his mind was, push her away. The rejection gave him a strange feeling in his heart. However, the moment he pushed the girl away, there was an extremely uncomfortable feeling in his heart. It was constantly fighting against another emotion that came out of his heart. It made him unable to control himself. What the hell was going on? Why, as long as this girl was by his side, why did he always have this strange emotion? On the selection stage, the 10 questions segment was already in full swing. Because the elders of the judging panel only gave them 10 chances to ask questions. Miao Rongrong and the others naturally wouldn't ask questions easily. Instead they racked their brains to think of the most obscure and difficult questions about Gu. Until now, that group of people had only asked 3 questions. The 3 saintesses answered by rushing to answer. Those 3 questions were about the cultivation of many forbidden Gu, as well as the cultivation of forbidden Gu worms, and the methods to cure them. Miao Xuedong and Miao Zhilian didn't have the chance to answer. Even though they were familiar with all kinds of books about Gu worms and Gu since they were young, they couldn't answer these questions accurately. Because the Miao tribe was the most taboo. Everything about Gu. They were absolutely not allowed to touch any forbidden Gu techniques or Gu worms. Just like the forbidden place of the Miao tribe, no one dared to step into it for hundreds of years. Therefore, when Miao Rongrong's party asked questions about Gu worms and so on, the 2 of them were completely dumbfounded. They didn't know. Not to mention Miao Yi. But when the first question came out, Miao Yi's expression didn't change and her answer was flawless. Everyone's expression changed slightly. The second question Miao Yi still answered flawlessly. The way everyone looked at Miao Yi changed. The third question Miao Yi answered calmly again flawlessly. At this moment not only Miao Rongrong's party was shocked, but the elders of the judging panel were also shocked. 3 questions had been asked. There were only 7 chances left. Miao Rongrong's henchmen were already panicking. Miao Yang's face was ashen. He gritted his teeth and glared at Miao Yi, his voice trembling. No. This is impossible. How do you know so many forbidden Gu techniques and Gu worms of the Miao tribe? Where did you learn it? As he finished speaking, Miao Yang seemed to have found a breakthrough point. His eyes widened abruptly. I know. Did you secretly learn the Miao tribe's forbidden venomous spell? He became a witchcraft master. Like I said, how could a useless person like you have such a thorough understanding of the Miao tribe's Gu poison in such a short period of time? Miao Yang's words caused the expressions of the Miao clansmen to change. They all looked at Miao Yi. He tried to find some clues from Miao Yi. Once the taboo Miao Gu was involved to the Miao tribe, that person was a Gu master. If Miao Yi became a Wu Gu master, then he would have to accept the Miao tribe's punishment of burning him to the heavens. On the selection stage, the girl who was the center of everyone's attention slowly revealed a disdainful smile on her young and pretty face. Her pair of spirited eyes slowly swept across the crowd below the stage. Finally it landed on Miao Yang. Chapter 2796. Senior Miao Yang is slandering me for cheating, and now he's slandering me as a witchcraft master? The girl was still laughing. But in her laughter there were other emotions mixed in. Clearly the girl was smiling. However, as they watched they felt a sense of heartache. They felt that the girl in front of them was just forcing herself to smile and remain calm in the face of so many doubts. The Miao tribesmen's hearts softened. Thinking of how Miao Yang and the rest had determined that Miao Yi had cheated and all sorts of accusations. The Miao tribesmen were filled with guilt. That's right, they had slandered Miao Yi for cheating. Now they were slandering Miao Yi for being a witchcraft master? A girl who was not even 15 was slandered for cheating in the Saintess selection. It was equivalent to ruining the girl's life. Now they were saying that the girl was a witchcraft master. Were they planning to use their anger to burn the girl as a witchcraft master and sacrifice her to heaven? It was too vicious. The Miao tribesmen were very clear how much damage these two slander could cause to a person or even a family. Miao Yang and the rest were obviously determined to kill Miao Yi. Indeed, since young, because of my so-called sister, I did not have the chance to come into contact with Miao Gu. Miao Yi enunciated each word slowly. Have you ever thought about why she is so wary of me? Miao Yi looked at the Miao tribesman, her lips curling into a self-deprecating smile. Because Miao Rongrong is afraid of my talent towards Miao Gu, she laughed softly. Her laughter was filled with coldness. As long as I come into contact with Miao Gu, no matter what kind of Gu technique it is, I can easily remember it in my mind and also the method to cure it. Miao Yi's words were like a sudden clap of thunder, striking the Miao clansmen until they were tender on the inside and crispy on the outside. The elders of the Miao tribe stood up in disbelief and looked at Miao Yi. Miao Gu prodigy. Miao Yi was actually a rare Miao Gu prodigy. With such a prodigy, Miao Yixiong was actually buried. Miao Yang was clearly stunned by Miao Yi's words. He roared hysterically, "Impossible! Why, you're lying. You want to mold yourself into a Miao Gu genius so that the elders will be biased towards you, right?" Miao Yi was very calm in the face of Miao Yang's hoarse screams. She smiled and didn't respond to Miao Yang's words. The Miao clansmen and elders naturally chose to believe in Miao Yi. Miao Yi definitely did not have the guts to fake Miao Gu's innate talent in front of everyone. After all, it would only take a few days of observation to determine whether Miao Gu was a genius or not. Puchi. A chuckle leisurely rippled over the square. It also suppressed Miao Yang's hoarse screams. Everyone turned to the source of the voice. The red-clothed girl in the first row of the guest seats giggled and said, "Aren't you going to ask a question to prove your innocence? What's the point of talking about other meaningless things?" Yiqing Luo indifferently raised her brows as her long and narrow eyes were filled with impatience. "Miao Gongzi has been slandering Yi time and time again. Is it because you feel that the Miao tribesmen are all fools, the elders are all fools, and the surrounding crowd are all fools? That you can incite as you wish?" Her tone was very light and gentle, without the slightest fluctuation of emotions. Miao Yang and the others' faces immediately turned black. Chapter 2797. Those who originally had suspicions towards Miao Yi didn't dare to reveal it at this moment. If they really suspected Miao Yi, wouldn't that be admitting that they were fools who could be easily incited? "Master Miao, don't waste everyone's time." Yiqing Luo's expression seemed to be impatient. Following that, she leaned her body towards the silent man beside her. That coquettish posture, matched with that devastatingly beautiful face. It really had a sense of a femme fatale, a femme fatale. This scene was indeed beautiful. But no one dared to admire it, especially when they heard the impatience in Yiqing Luo's tone. They felt apprehensive in their hearts. "There are still 7 more questions. Master Miao, looking at your attitude, I feel that even if you finish all 10 questions you will not believe Yi. Is there a need to continue with these questions?" Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her faint gaze swept towards Miao Yang. "Ask. Elder has already listed out the rules, 10 questions it is." Miao Yang wouldn't give up this chance. Only 3 questions had been answered so far. For the remaining questions, as long as Miao Yi didn't manage to answer any question or didn't answer it, then no matter if it was cheating or Miao Yi's self-bestowed title of Miao Gu Genius, it would all be crushed. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly. She had seen shameless people but never to such a shameless person. Right from the start he was the one who was pestering endlessly. Now he actually pushed the responsibility of the questioning round to Elder Miao? Yiqing Luo laughed coldly as she raised her volume. "Then continue asking. After the 10 questions are over, I believe the elders will have an idea whether our Yi is really a Miao Gu genius or not, and whether she needs to cheat to pass the Sacred Maiden's selection checkpoint." Yiqing Luo spoke. Even if Miao Yang and the rest wanted to continue using other ways to slander Miao Yi, to disrupt Miao Yi's rhythm, at this moment they couldn't continue. As for the others, they wouldn't be able to incite them so easily. Another 2 questions which they racked their brains to come up with. Once again Miao Yi had answered them flawlessly. Even those answers Miao Yang and the rest didn't know. But looking at the shocked, satisfied and amazed expressions on the faces of the elders, he knew that Miao Yi must have gotten it right. At this moment, it was not only Miao Yang and the others who were feeling anxious. At this moment, Miao Zhilian was trembling in fear. Because of Miao Gu's talent, Miao Zhilian had never suffered any grievances since she was young. Now, in front of everyone, her dignity was being trampled on by a piece of trash that she had always looked down on. After losing the quiz contest, Yi Xuanxi would become the laughingstock of the Miao people. No, absolutely not. She would never run 3 laps around the Miao tribe. He would never say that she was useless. Miao Zhilian gripped her sleeves tightly as she looked at Miao Yang and the others anxiously. As long as she could answer the remaining 5 questions, she might not necessarily lose. However, when Miao Zhilian's gaze fell on Miao Yang, but when he met Miao Yang's eyes, he gave him a suggestive look. Miao Zhilian's beautiful eyes widened as her body tensed up. Miao Yang's eyes flickered as he mouthed the message silently. I'll ask a simple question. Answer it immediately. Miao Zhilian's eyes trembled as she nodded her head continuously. This was the answering mode. As long as she answered first, Miao Yi would lose the right to answer the next question. Chapter 2798. But the two of them thought that they were infallible as they secretly exchanged glances. But it fell into Yi Qingluo's eyes completely. She squinted her eyes as she realized something and was about to get up to stop their conspiracy. But her body had yet to move. A large palm suddenly clasped her slender waist tightly. He held her firmly in his arms. Yi Qingluo's nose was filled with the man's sandalwood scent. She frowned as she raised her head and looked at the man's smooth and beautiful chin. She pursed her thin lips, but the next moment her lips curled as she smiled and said, "Overlord, you can't bear for me to leave?" Originally, Yi Qingluo thought that after she said this sentence, the pampered and arrogant Xian Xian would definitely let go and use his deep eyes to look at her fixedly. Then he spat out a word, "Ha." But Xian Xian didn't let go. Indeed, he spat out a word. But that word wasn't ha, but n. He softly and slowly replied with an n, and didn't continue to speak. This n made Yi Qingluo's petite body suddenly trembled. Her eyes suddenly widened as she propped herself up and met his gaze. Really? He actually replied with an n? Admitted that he couldn't leave her? When did this man become so honest? Then, my next question. Suddenly, Miao Yang's voice was heard from the crowd. Yi Qingluo was stunned as she immediately shook off the seduction in her mind. I'm not leaving. After settling this matter, I'll be back immediately. She struggled as both her hands held onto Xian Xian's chest and was about to climb up. But, the next moment, her 2 hands were tightly held by Xian Xian. Following that, the force on his waist increased in strength. Yi Qingluo almost fell into Xian Xian's arms. Xian Xian. Yi Qingluo's chin knocked against his chest as she frowned in pain. Stop fooling around. Xian Xian squinted his peach blossom eyes. His eyes were deep and dark. Hearing Yi Qingluo calling him by his full name. Hearing Yi Qingluo throwing a tantrum at him. His mood was inexplicably joyful. It was as if he was able to stir up more of the girl's emotions, and he felt extremely satisfied. The girl in his arms began to struggle again. Her soft little hands moved up and down his body through his robe. The softness made his lower abdomen a little tight. Xian Xian. Yi Qingluo felt the changes on his body and her cheeks flushed red as she gritted her teeth and howled out his name once again. Even if he had forgotten her, this man was still as beastly as before. Xian Xian lowered his head and his scorching breath sprayed onto her neck as he gave a low laugh. Isn't it said that she's not willing to be a mediocre person, so why is there a need to be like old maid, protecting her in every aspect? You helped her get out of trouble this time, then what about the next time, the time after that? Xian Xian's words were extremely cold. But it was indeed reasonable. Yi Qingluo was speechless for a moment. The man's temperature was still rising. His breath was so hot that her skin felt like it was being brushed by flames. Her delicate body trembled. At the same time, Miao Yang had already asked the next question and was even gesturing to Miao Zhilian at the same time. What's the best food to feed the goo worm? Miao Zhilian's eyes shone as she speedily stretched out her hand to snatch the handkerchief on the table. Whoever snatched the handkerchief first would be able to answer. But the moment Miao Zhilian's hand touched the handkerchief, Chapter 2799. The blood essence of the person who breeds the goo. The girl's voice was clear as it fell into everyone's ears clearly. This was the answer to this question. Miao Zhilian's outstretched hand froze in midair. Aya. The girl patted her head in annoyance as she looked at Miao Zhilian apologetically. Sorry, I've consecutively answered so many questions that I've formed a habit and thought that you guys couldn't answer, so I answered on my own. After the young lady's words were spoken, the guests couldn't help but burst out laughing. Miao Zhilian's face turned green and white. The humiliation and resentment and shame made her hate Miao Yi even more. She retracted her hand, which was about to touch the handkerchief, as she gritted her teeth and stared at Miao Yi. Seeing this scene, Yiqing Luo also stopped struggling as a sliver of smile appeared in her eyes. She had indeed grown up. She knew how to use the first answer method to ruin the cooperation between Miao Zhilian and Miao Yang. Even if this question was answered by Miao Yi without snatching the handkerchief, it wouldn't be scored. But similarly, Miao Zhilian's question had also missed the opportunity. Miao Yi was considered to have lost this question's score. She was still far ahead. After all, it wasn't that she couldn't answer this question, it was just that she forgot to snatch the handkerchief. This little sister of yours is rather smart. Dmo Xian's chin was placed on Yiqing Luo's neck as his deep hoarse voice carried a bewitching magnetism. Yiqing Luo's body softened as a complacent smile hung on her face. Of course. Not struggling anymore? Dmo Xian raised his brows as he sneered. No, Overlord can't bear to part with me, why would I struggle? Yiqing Luo giggled as she snuggled into Dmo Xian's arms. Her hands were about to wrap around Dmo Xian's waist. The man's large palm directly grabbed onto her shoulders. Following that, he exerted force. Yiqing Luo's body was lifted away from his body. Heh. Dmo Xian resumed his aloof abstinence. Yiqing Luo. Did he need to be so heartless? The overlord who admitted that he couldn't bear to part with her just now might be a lie. Dmo Xian ignored the young lady's blazing gaze as he calmly looked ahead. In the next instant, a furry little thing crashed into his arms. The girl's entire body seemed to be glued to his. She hugged his waist tightly with both hands and muttered, "You don't want to recognize me just because you put on your pants? No way." Dmo Xian, the little head in his arms, was still arching incessantly. The glint in Dmo Xian's eyes softened a little. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile that even he himself didn't notice. After a while, his thin lips moved slightly. His voice was husky and sexy. "Put on pants? This lord hasn't taken off my pants with you yet, right?" Yiqing Luo expressed that the noble and elegant overlord need not reply to this sentence. After Miao Yi snatched to answer that simple question, she looked at the judging elder guiltily. "I really didn't do it on purpose. May I ask all the elders, how should this question be counted?" The judging elder was also dumbfounded by this scene. Hearing Miao Yi's question, he was stunned for a moment before he coughed and continued, "This question no one will be counted. Continue to the next question." Chapter 2800. Rules. The judging elder was obviously angered as well. He sneered, "Why don't you tell me what the rules are?" Miao Yang opened his mouth and wanted to refute, but when the words reached his mouth he could not say anything. Indeed, from the start there was no rule. This was just to prove that Miao Yi did not cheat and added a question segment. There was no written rule that one must snatch the handkerchief to answer. There was no written rule that if one did not answer according to the rules he would lose. Miao Yang's expression froze for a moment. In the end he could only bitterly clench his fists and hang his head, unable to refute. The judging elder snorted, "This is the Saintess selection ceremony. If you have any other thoughts, don't put them on the Saintess candidate. Otherwise, even if the Saintess does not care, this elder will represent the Saintess to punish the tribesmen who sabotaged the selection." The warning of the judging elder was equivalent to the warning of the other elders. Miao Yang's expression was ugly and did not dare to raise his head. Now they had lost Miao Rongrong's protection. In this Miao tribe there was no place for them to stand. If they offended the Miao elders, if the final result was death, it would be a relief for them. What they were afraid of was that it would be more painful than death. If there are no objections, continue the questioning. Don't waste the tribesmen's and guests' time. The judging elder coldly glanced at Miao Yang and the rest, his tone full of impatience. There were 4 more questioning opportunities. All 6 questions were answered by Miao Yi alone. Even if one of the questions was not scored, Miao Yi could be considered to have answered 5 questions properly. Compared to the other 2, the Saintess candidate who did not answer a single question, Miao Yi was already far ahead. He was 100% sure of Miao Yi's talent in Miao Gu. A Miao Gu genius did not need any cheating methods. The judging elder's heart was filled with Miao Yi, this Miao Gu genius. There was no other existence in his eyes. Miao Yang and the others couldn't think of a more obscure Gu technique at this moment. Their expressions were extremely ugly. Their gazes suddenly swept across the Miao tribesmen. Miao Yang clenched his fists, raising his voice. Since Miao Yi said that she is a Miao Gu genius, there is no point in answering our questions. Why don't we let the other clansmen personally witness how much of a genius you are? The Miao tribesmen immediately became silent. To be honest, they really wanted to personally verify the truth of Miao Yi's words. If Miao Yi was really a Miao Gu genius, in that case the holy maiden of this generation would definitely be her. Could the Miao tribe be stable and continue to flourish? It all depended on whether the Saintess had chosen well enough. Therefore, if Miao Yi was truly a Miao Gu genius, they were willing to submit in body and mind. However, the Miao tribesmen did not immediately express their thoughts. Instead, they turned their gazes towards the 2 judging elders on the selection stage. Then the judging elder nodded. The Miao tribesmen finally moved. The group of people gathered together and discussed for the time it took an incense stick to burn. Finally, a representative of the tribe raised a question. This question did not point towards the direction of witchcraft. But as soon as it was brought up, even the elders of the Miao tribe might not understand, much less some of the tribe members. Not to mention Miao Xuedan and Miao Zhilian. Chapter 2801. Miao Yang saw this and was overjoyed. As expected, letting the Miao tribesman ask the question was the right choice. He could not help but laugh loudly. Miao Yi, didn't you say you are a Miao Gu genius? Why, you can't answer the Miao tribesman's question. Huh. If you don't have the ability, don't make empty promises. Miao Yang and the others burst into laughter. The group was laughing. The Miao tribesman's expressions were not good. He felt even more apprehensive in his heart. The questions they posed were indeed too tricky, because even they themselves did not know what the answer was. It could be said that the question they asked was an unsolved riddle of the Miao tribe for hundreds of years. Even if Miao Yi was a Miao Gu genius, to a riddle that could not be solved for hundreds of years, Miao Yi would not be able to answer it. The tribesman's representative heard Miao Yang and the rest's unbridled laughter, and felt increasingly upset. After a long while, the Zhou people's representative decided to change the question to the judging elder. The tribesman's representative took a step forward and was about to speak. Suddenly, the woman who had been silent all this while took a step forward. She moved. The entire place was silent. The Zhou people's representative's movements also froze. Hundreds of pairs of eyes looked at the girl. The girl slowly stretched out her hand and took the handkerchief. The judging elder stood up excitedly. Many tribesmen stared with wide eyes in disbelief. Miao Yang and the rest's laughter also stopped at this moment. Even the surrounding guests did not understand the Miao tribe's question, and could not understand what the Saintess meant to the Miao tribe. She was just a passerby and could not help but hold their breaths. Miao Yi was to answer this question? She could really answer it. Under everyone's different gazes, Miao Yi held the handkerchief, her beautiful eyes calm as she slowly said, I have only seen this Gu in ancient books. If I am wrong, I hope the elders can forgive me. The other elders could not help but tremble in excitement. The judging elder immediately shook his head. No matter, say it. What do you mean no matter? If she's wrong, that means she cheated her way to the top. Miao Yang said angrily. The judging elder's white eyebrows furrowed as he sneered and shot a glance in the direction of the square's periphery. A group of Miao tribe guards rushed over. 2 guards, one on the left and one on the right, restrained Miao Yang. Miao Yang did not even have the time to resist before he was pinned to his seat by the guards. The dozen or so henchmen around him all sat stiffly on the soft cushions, not daring to move. Let me go. What right do you have to capture me? Let me go. Miao Yang struggled with all his might. His facial features were twisted as he roared ferociously. The judging elder sneered. Just based on the fact that you have repeatedly disrupted the Saintess selection ceremony, this elder has the right to punish you for your offense. Miao Yang bared his teeth in anger. I refuse to accept this. I'm just raising my suspicions as a citizen. How did I disrupt the Saintess ceremony? Bet on his mouth. The judging elder's cold eyes swept across. The guard took out a ball of cloth from somewhere and stuffed it into Miao Yang's mouth. Suddenly the world became quiet,